Hello and welcome to probably one of the more awkward replays that I've ever done, in that I have a cat on my lap at the moment, so I'm kind of positioned slightly differently than usual, so it might sound a little more echoey or something, I don't know. So we're starting off with a little clip of what not to do when you're the very first ship spotted on a team. Yeah. Goodbye that Stalingrad. I could have had this as a whole separate replay, but yeah, it was given to me by Ultra Bacon just really because of that one moment, and it was a pretty good game overall, but maybe not the most interesting match. Our main feature today, however, is this Chung match, courtesy of Cosgit. I don't quite know what that is. Like, what does it stand for? I don't know. It's obviously short for something, but your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. Maybe they're a cosplaying Git. I don't know. And, you know, now they've just unsubscribed from my channel, so we'll probably never know. The Chung is probably still the better of the two top-tierist Pan-Asian destroyers. It's a Deepwater Torp Fletcher, essentially. Although the actual Fletcher is mostly better. This obviously has more smokes, but obviously Deepwater torpedoes. And Deepwater Torps remain a bit of a liability in any situation where you are dealing with other destroyers. But this at least has got fast-firing guns, and it's reasonable in terms of its stealth. Unlike, well, I mean, the Yueyang's not that bad, but it's not great in terms of visibility, and the Yueyang overall is just not great. There was actually, in the recent Q&A answers thing that they had on the community Discord, they acknowledged, someone was using the Yueyang as an example, and they acknowledged that yes, the Yueyang is basically at the bottom end of what they would consider to be acceptable stats, so it really wouldn't have to be much more down before they would buff it. But honestly, I think most people would think it needs a buff right now. Anyway, this is a little bit risky. There's quite a few enemy ships pushing in. Cosgit has landed a torpedo already, but they are wisely deciding discretion is the better part of valor and not just sitting in that smoke screen waiting to be discovered. They have lost one ally here already, the other destroyer that was in this cap, so that's not great, but it's not too bad. They do seem to be rather outnumbered on this flank though, which bodes less well for the other side, where they haven't been able to take it, and where they actually appear to have kind of more or less equal numbers. But that's probably accounted for by the fact that we have the KGV and the Colorado that are just being pinged right now. And also, have you noticed that the A cap is being taken by a very, very cheeky Benson that just went straight up the middle and is actually now getting their first cap. That's not something you usually see on this map, that the first allied cap is to be flipped is actually the cap that the enemy team start with. At this stage, Cosgit really doesn't have much of a choice except to just fall back. The Venito's died, the Vladivostok is now in a very untenable position. But they will do a bit more before they go down. They're actually going to push around the side of that island and come and blast things at close range, which might have some element of surprise to it. Cosgit, meanwhile, just has to wait for his torpedo reload, which is not particularly good. It's not as bad as on the Yueyang, but yeah, these things are weird. They pay quite a lot for having that reduced torpedo detectability. They do at least do good damage in terms of the torpedoes. It's just you don't get to put them out all that often, which can make playing them as torpedo boats quite frustrating sometimes. But fortunately, a lot of the line also have decent guns, I mean, the Tier 7, for example, which I have temporarily forgotten the name of, but that's basically a British destroyer, which has exceptional firing angles and is, I think, last time I checked anyway, among the top of the Tier 7 destroyers for just general damage, XP and whatever. So the line overall, you know, there are some very good points to it, but the Pan-Asian line, you kind of have to be willing to deal with the peculiarities. They're definitely not a line for everybody, and they're not a line that you see that much overall compared to the non-deep water torp ships. Well, excepting Asashio, of course, because that's kind of a special case. So that is the first kill, up to nearly 100,000 damage done. The Vladivostok is actually not going through. They've done a drive past, but obviously that will have gotten some enemy ships' attention in the process. But that could be an opportunity for Kosgit to maybe sneak in a bit closer and do some damage. If you're wondering, by the way, how the heck there was an Alba in this Tier 9 game, yeah, a bit of failed divisioning going on there. This is a top tier Tier 9 game, so hence there being obviously Tier 7s in play. You might have noticed the Benson actually, I mean, they didn't bail out perhaps when they could have, but they've drawn away two enemy destroyers, the Mirka and the Östergötland. So, I don't know, they kept a pair of destroyers occupied for a fair while, which is not completely terrible, but it might have been better if they had maybe tried to make an escape. They could have pressed west, for example. I mean, we've taken the... Did I say A cap before that? A cap, it's the B cap, that top cap, isn't it? Yeah, they could have pressed west towards that big group of ships there and harassed them from the side, maybe even the north, but that still would have put them in a position where the enemy team could close the net around them. It's just, it might have also put them in range of allies. So we know exactly where that Udachi is. The Colorado and Alba are still around here somewhere, and the Alba in particular, those guns can hit very hard, but there's only 6 of them. So this is a bit of a risk, although it is helped by the fact that the Alba also has a fairly poor turret traverse. But as it turns out, the Vladivostok just annihilates the Alba, and that just leaves the Colorado. And here's where those smokes come in very useful, and as I said many times in the past, this is by far and away my favourite feature of this line of ships is the smokes that they get, which are a really nice balance in between duration, laying time, and of course you just get more of them. And I honestly wish the new German 15cm destroyers had a similar style of smoke. Maybe still the German duration, but like 1 or 2 extra charges. That would have been nice, especially as on some of the ships, in fact on most of the ships, is it like Tier 9 and 10 you get the, I can't remember, is it a heal or a defensive or something extra, but certainly Tier 7 and Tier 8 you've only got those 3 smokes, and so Superintendent for just 1 extra smoke doesn't really become worth it for those 3 points, and yet then you're only left with 3 German smokes, and the German smokes are not very good. So yeah, I really think they could have benefited from some Pan-Asian style smokes, but sadly it was not to be. So that's the cap flipped. Those destroyers that went north are now in the middle, and we've just lost a Shiratsu, so it looks like they are going to take back A. There's only 2 ships left over there now, 2 allied ships. And overall, this is a very tight game. This team is a little behind on points and only 1 behind in ships, so it's not terrible overall. The Vladivostok has also managed to stay alive, which is really nice, but the Udachi is also running around, which is less nice. So Torp's out on the Colorado, And there's the Mirka. Let's see if Kozgit thinks it's worth the risk, and yes he does. He opens up, he absolutely knows he can beat this thing in terms of DPM, but as it is, it's the Vladivostok who gets yet another kill. That's what, their third kill, so they've actually been doing really quite well. The downside of opening up like that and giving his position away is that Kozgit has basically flagged exactly where there were going to be torpedoes coming from, and so the Colorado was able to dodge all of those without any difficulty whatsoever. There's a good 30 plus seconds before he gets more back, so yeah, probably not going to be a good opportunity to drop on that Colorado again in the very near future. With the Ash attacker down, that just leaves the KGV on the west side. They're probably not going to last too much longer, so it looks like it's going to be down to Kozgit and these two battleships that are close by to him to pull this one through. The KGV might do some damage before they go down. It'd be nice if they could pull a kill, but we'll see. Talking of remaining enemy ships though, there is the Yudachi, and this is a bit of a dangerous situation. Yudachi's torps are slow, but at this range they could still potentially nuke Kozgit out of the water, but as it turns out, the Yudachi is fully focused on the Colorado and decided not to change their plans to account for the fact that, oh yeah, there's a destroyer right in my face, and so that's basically going to be the last thing they ever do. They have managed to get some hits on the Colorado, and you can see there they use their reload booster to put out even more torps on the Colorado in an effort to kill it, but yeah, it's not going to do the job. So there goes the Yudachi in a rather desperate last bid to take out a battleship. We've also, taking out battleships, just lost the KGV and the Vladivostok, who actually did quite a lot on this flank. They made the somewhat unwise decision to push into that exposed middle, and unfortunately that basically got them fired at by, I think, everybody that was remaining. So yeah, they are now down for the count. So that's 2 destroyers left, and a Colorado versus 1 destroyer and another Colorado. It kind of depends what health these destroyers have. The Östergötland, of course, has a heal, although the Swedish destroyer heal isn't super strong, but it's better than nothing, and we know the Colorado, well, you can see there, they're at about 40% health. 1 good spread of torpedoes will do it. Of course, getting them to actually sail into the torpedoes is going to be a whole other matter. So at this point, it's either kill all the remaining things quite quickly, or get caps, and given that they have got a ship disadvantage and a cap disadvantage, and well, a time disadvantage as well, we're running down to less than 4 minutes, that there isn't really enough time to take and hold caps in a way that's going to bring the points back in their favour. So kill things it is. So there's just Östergötland, very low health, nice easy kill. That was definitely worth opening fire for. Colorado had AP, so that could have hurt a lot worse than it did. And there's the Mirka, who's also firing AP. And that is quite nasty AP, that stuff. They immediately switched to high explosive. Now that smoke, I think, was rather reflexive. But as it turns out, well, it doesn't really matter that's a smoke used, because those torpedoes did find their mark on the Colorado, and that just leaves this enemy Mirka. And now it's 2 versus 1, although the Colorado isn't really in a position to shoot right now, so it's basically 1 versus 1. American 127s versus those rather slow German 150s. Well, I have to say, having gotten to the Mirka, it's a huge improvement on the Z31, but it's still not great. I've had 1 or 2 very decent games here, and otherwise it does struggle a bit. Certainly for this kind of late game situation, it's not an ideal ship to be in at all. So, 130k, high caliber, 4 kills, and potentially that could have been a Kraken in that game as well if he'd managed to get one of the the kills that the the Vladivostok ninja. But overall, you can actually see there was a pretty good team effort, and the KGV that was the last to go down on the west flank did go down, swinging. Obviously, Kozgit at the top there, 2100, fairly crucial to that being a win, but we can certainly say that some other team members were rather important as well. So, yeah, it was a very close game, and a nice bit of overall team play in that people didn't throw the hat in. Sometimes in these situations you get people just all, I don't know, losing their heads and charging in and doing silly things, and to some extent the Vladivostok kind of did towards the end, but most other people seem to have been playing reasonably sensibly. Well, you know, for World Warships. So that is it for this replay. If you enjoyed it, you can do all the usual things down underneath the video, and from both myself and the cat cleaning himself on my lap, I shall say, as always, stay tuned for more.